All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks a bunch for making time to watch this. I'm Hunter Taylor, author of Draw the Line, which comes out June 28th. And as I've mentioned before, we thought it'd be fun to do a couple of these with some of the actual people who deserve a ton of credit for either influencing the story and or the entire sports culture of the East Texas area. Our first one was with former Jacksonville head coach Danny Long and Hall of Fame broadcaster David Smoke. And then the second one we had featured Gilmer's head coach and athletic director Alan Metzel, assistant coach of former quarterback Olin Johnson, and CBS 19's Reagan Roy Young. Both episodes were incredible. Please check them out on the book's webpage. Just go to huntertaylor.design, click on Draw the Line, or you can Google them on YouTube. Just Draw the Line interviews episode 1 with Danny Long and David Smoke, or Draw the Line interviews episode 2 with Alan Metzel, Olin Johnson, and Reagan Roy Young. And now for this one. We've got current head football coach and athletic director of the Carthage Bulldogs, Scott Surratt, former head basketball coach of the White Oak Roughnecks, Ron Boyett, and national scouting analyst for 24/7 Sports, Carthage's Gabe Brooks. And between the four of us, we have 10 state championship rings. Gabe and I mentioned that earlier, so not bad. So, guys, thanks for agreeing to do this.
Sure.
Yeah,
no problem. We should thank Scott also for that small contribution to those 10 championships while we're at it too. For all part he's done there. So
I appreciate it.
So
it's harder to do it basketball.
So people are going to ask why I asked both of you to be a part of this on the series. And one of the big reasons is I know both of y'all are actually great friends with Jeff. And I know both of y'all are as extremely competitive as it gets. But if you wouldn't mind opening it up, talking about competing against him and rooting for him now, and feel free to tell a funny story.
Well, I'll start off. He's football coach, and I'm just proud of Jeff, man. He was obviously a phenomenal high school coach, and I love to compete against him. And the class act. Not only Jeff but his whole staff, but quick story. They were open. I think it was the first year that Jeff Traylor Stadium was open, maybe in the second, I don't know. But after they named the stadium after me, we went over there, and it was a big district, ball game district of doom, and referee told me we was out of timeouts. We knew we had one, but anyway, our sideline guy said we was out, and so I was on the field because we were down on the 30-yard line going in and had a little time, and Traylor's hollering at me, and the official get him off of my field. And so I kind of keep easing out, and we start hollering at each other. Then I got one of my 15-yarders. I only had 2 in my career, and that was one. And so he called us out there, and he said, "You can't get him off my field." And I said, "I'm gonna get off your field, man." But I said, "I got a timeout left." And anyway, it was a good deal. He said, "Well, the official's a 13 ball." I said, "What?" He said, "No." He said, "Sky's 13 ball." I said, "What?" He said, "Remember, we drew a 13 ball for him. We got this officiate crew." And I said, "That ought to be a 15-yarder there." Anyway, it was always great to compete against Jeff, and obviously, he's the best. And told me one time that he said one of us has got to break this door down and go make millions, and he's the one that did it. I'm the one that's still in high school, so I wouldn't trade him though.
Well, as far as I go, I was fortunate. Jeff and I actually didn't compete against each other a whole lot, with me being in basketball, but we knew each other from college, and so we competed a lot together. We played intramurals basketball together, and a lot of people don't know that Jeff's first head coaching position was as the head basketball coach at Big Sandy. And kind of like Scott was telling there about the get off my field kind of stuff. If y'all can imagine Jeff, when he goes through those antics on the sidelines, at least, once a game when it's a competitive game at the officials and all that, if you can imagine him doing that same thing in a gymnasium when maybe 10 people are there on a Saturday morning during the consolation game that Big Sandy's playing in, then, you can probably imagine how loud that was, and, quite a scene. Because he was the same guy then, as he is now. But like I said, we played intramurals together. It was fun. We had our own 5 guys we always took all the time, so we competed together. And, ironically, of the 7 guys on our team, 5 of us became head coaches, and 3 of us won state championships. So that was pretty cool to have a group like that. And, he was always somebody who was fun to support. we did compete a little bit, I guess, as far as we were in their district the last 2 years before we dropped down in football, down a classification. And so he was probably at that time, this was 2007, 2008, probably the most hated guy in White Oak at that time, because I think he beat us 63-7 both years that we played in football our last 2 years. So he wasn't real popular around here. I can remember sitting in the coach's office down there and doing scout report stuff. And, you know, the guys would kind of be grumbling about, you know, Gilmer and Jeff and, man, all the athletes they got and all that. And I'd be like, you know, hold on, there's a little bit more to it than just them having athletes. No doubt about they got that, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And the story I'll end on with this part is during basketball, after that second 63-7 romping they put on us, we're playing over at Gilmer, and he's sitting over on the visitor side when I walk in with my team, and we sit down. It's a little bit before halftime, waiting in to get dressed. I'm sitting on the bottom row, and here he comes across the baseline of the gym. Now, our White Oak side's pretty full then, and, you know, Gilmer had a pretty good crowd too. I see him strolling over, and he's got this grin on his face, and I'm thinking, surely you're not fixing to do this. And here he comes, and yeah, he gives me the bro hug, and we sit down. He puts his arm around me, and I look at him and I said, brother, I appreciate the love, but you're making me the most hated guy in White Oak with you right now. You're about to get me fired with all this stuff. So he just kind of chuckled and walked off. But we had a lot of fun competing together, particularly in college.
Awesome. Now, another reason I asked both of you is like a sizable amount of the book focuses on just the time period in East Texas from like 2008 to 2013, and just how, you know, from state championships to, you know, so much attention being finally given to that region for the coaches. It was a perfect storm. And I believe every single year, I think Gabe and I talked about this right before, every single year during that time period from 08 to 13, one of you or both of you won a state championship. And so I was just curious, we were talking this before, of like the amount of pride. Gabe's originally from Carthage, I'm from White Oak. And so there's a fondness we both have for both of y'all. But what were your respective communities like when you're talking about how unique East Texas is about rallying behind a school district and its local team?
Well, it was crazy in Carthage. I know that. It was the first in 08 was the first state championship in school history. And, you know, we played Salina. They were going in the state championship. They were going for the ninth state championship, would have been a record at the time. And they were headed at halftime. But the Sea of Red, I mean, you can ask Gabe, it was nuts, the very first one. And then, you know, just to keep going. And everybody, one thing I remember about is the local print shop here, Complete Printing, they donated for our celebration on 08, our posters and state championship posters, and they donated 2,000. And so our defense coordinator, Garrett Morgan, said, we ought to sell them. And so I called this guy and say, can we sell them? He says, yeah, I don't care what you sell them. We sold them for $10. We was out in a week. And so it was $20,000, you know, which was big time at that point. But it was crazy how, you know, the community needed something, needed good football at the time, and it struggled. And I was a lucky one to get it in 07, and it's just been crazy ever since. But 08 to 13 was really, really wild. I got asked by a reporter when we didn't win it in 11 and 12. You know, he said, "Well, I know you hadn't been here in a while, Coach," and I went, "Yeah, you're right about that. It feels like 10 years or 15 years." Only been two seasons, so but anyway, I said, you sound like Carthage. You're spoiled like them. But anyway, no, it's been great, man. It's just been a blast.
Well, and we run in 2012, and it had been, you know, White Oak had won it before in the 50s twice, but it had been since 1957 that we had won a state championship. And so, like Scott was talking about, with that much time in between, so much excitement within the entire community. Just the community itself, the school, our student section. I know Gabe will remember this. I think he was at ETSN during that time, and they actually did a story, I think, on our student section. It was called the Mojos at that time. Do you remember that, Gabe?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, they were awesome. And just encompassing everybody that was there. I've just never seen anything like it. And then after we won it in 2012, I know Scott can identify with this. We were heading home, and we'd stop to eat a little bit outside, I think in Round Rock. And, just won the state championship a couple hours earlier than that. We're leaving the restaurant. Somebody stops me and they said, well, Coach, are we going to do this again next year? And I'm like, it's been since 57 since we did it. And then but people, are already, can we do it again? That kind of deal and excitement. So we were fortunate to get to do that again afterwards. Same kind of excitement. I know Scott knows Jerry Stanford, who he was our football coach then. That was actually Jerry's first head coaching job in 2012. And so he was great with all that, got it all together, helped organize a lot of stuff. And we won it in 12 and 13. And then in 14, we lost an area. And I remember seeing Jerry after the game, after we lost an area on a last second shot. He's looking at me kind of funny. And I said, Jerry, we don't win the state championship every year. I know since you've been here, it seems like that, but that's not how it works, So, but that definitely that run, that time, I mean, it's like any sport in East Texas and small schools. Everybody's going to rally around it, and it's a blast when you get to do that.
Gabe, what do you remember about covering both of those?
Well, it's interesting looking back on it and going all the way back to when I started at the Longview newspaper, which would have been my first football season would have been 2005, and I got to cover Tatum, and they had Lennon Creer and Denarius Moore and about half a dozen other FBS level guys, starting then going all the way through this era we're talking about now. I mean, getting to cover those teams and those players carried with it a certain visibility from a media standpoint, personally, that played a large part in me not only going from the LNJ to ETSN, but going from ETSN to Scout, which was a national network at the time and was later purchased by 24/7 Sports, which I'm still with. And now I have national duties and everything. So none of that happens without me being able to cover, Kendall Thompson and Jalen Claiborne and Edward Pope, or Levi Yancey and Chris Anderson and all those guys back in those days. But, as far as the District of Doom, I mean, that was the thing that everybody, that was one of the biggest storylines in the state, regardless of classification in Texas high school football. And that 2010 season, I think, really was particularly relevant of that. Carthage was coming off of back-to-back, had a couple of hiccups in non-district because y'all were beat up. Chapel Hill was loaded, had Laramie Lee, who was an all-conference guy at North Texas, who was a two-way star for Chapel Hill. I believe Rex Rollins was on that team. He went to North Texas as well. They kind of entered district, and it's like, well, Gilmer, who had won it in 09 and D1, and the whole talk was, who's better, Gilmer or Carthage, because they didn't get to play each other in 09. And so now they're in the same district and along with Henderson. And there's this kind of belief that, Carthage may be, third out of those three going in. Well, sure enough, Gilmer plays at Carthage. Carthage just absolutely obliterates them. And I think the final was 38-21, but I want to say it was like 31-7 at halftime or in the third quarter. And I was in the press box, and the fabled Gilmer media crew was up there. And I don't know if I've ever seen them like that. And I've seen them in some bad situations. But then the very next week, Carthage goes to Henderson and is down 2 scores at halftime and comes back and wins in the second half. I think it was like 43-33, if I remember right. And then, goes on and has one of the best high school games I've ever seen against Brownwood in the state semifinals, wins the state championship. Henderson wins as the third place team in the district, wins the Division I state championship against Chapel Hill. So, I mean, that season is is really a microcosm of that era of East Texas football. And in regards to White Oak and basketball, I mean, you know, it's no secret that football is king in East Texas. So to get to, as a basketball, like, I don't think everybody realizes, but I'm like, basketball is my first sports love. Like, I'm a huge NBA guy. I watch all kinds of basketball to this day. So getting to cover a team of that level of ability, that deep in the playoffs, that was really just personally really fun for me. And being somebody who grew up on the old Region 14, and I mean, I was Panola's ball boy for 2 years, back when they had some, you know, back when Robert Pack was playing at TJC, and Steve Francis was at San Jacinto, and Francisco Elson was at Kilgore College, and all those guys. Just getting to cover a high school team that was that good in basketball was really, really fun.
Awesome. Coach Surratt, this one's for you. So when he just mentioned the District of Doom during that time period, kind of 10 to 14 in general, I guess, what about the East Texas region? I guess what made it so unique, special, competitive? You know, what do you, I guess, remember most about that era, if you will?
Well, you know, the District of Doom, it kept switching and we kept moving with it. Is what I really remember, because it went from Henderson to Gilmer to Gladewater, which was loaded. They had the Twins. It went up to Pittsburgh, I believe. I mean, it was, and then it goes to the 11 and 12, and we ended up with Kilgore, Chapel Hill, and Henderson, and we lost Gilmer. So those things travel. The things I remember the most is how good the coaches are. I mean, that's what's underrated in East Texas is how good the coaches are. You go up against Jeff Traylor, and you go up against Dickie Meeks and Mike Wood, and on and on. And those guys can really coach. But, you know, just the rivalries, since we're so close, I miss those now because they're spreading our district out and keep going. We don't play Henderson. We're not Gilmer, but it was just special times to get to have those rivalries and be so close. And like I said, it was well coached. But what I remember the most is how loaded the fields were with talent, and every week, and that's the reason it was named District of Doom. It was really deserved its name early for sure, because it was Division I talent everywhere, and you know, and it's hard to win it. But coming out of a district and staying healthy, and like the district we coming out every year, it's a tribute to how good of coaches I had and good players. And I still don't know how Coach Boyett won 2 in a row or 2 here at East Texas. That's amazing in basketball, because I love basketball too. I'm Gabe and watching it every time I get a chance. NBA zone right behind me right now. I think 76ers get smoked, but you know what he did was incredible also. But back to your question, the District of Doom was incredible and just full of great coaches and great players.
Coach Boyett, same question to you that I'm referencing, particularly like when it was like White Oak Tatum, and there was so many people paid attention to a region that's known as more of a football. I mean, it was incredible the amount of attention that was on basketball at that time. What do you remember about that time period?
Well, you know, mainly I think from 11 to 13, Tatum went to the state finals in 11. We won it in 12 and 13. And then they went again to the state finals in 14. And 3 of those 4 years, we were in the same district. And so, you know, somebody from our district went to the Final Four 3 of those 4 years. And that was just pretty amazing for this area in particular. But, you know, we were very similar in our communities, the support, obviously with Brett Carr, Pete Carr, as I've always known him as, I'm going to call him Pete. Being from White Oak, when he graduated in 83 from here and I graduated from 84. So there was a lot of tension towards that and things, and added a little bit extra to it, I think. But, you know, just the level of play at that time is probably not something we see all the time in our area. But just with the rivalry between the schools and the fans and everything just made it so much fun, you know, for everybody that was involved. But it was kind of unique for that 4-year span there to know that if you came out of our region, you had a chance to win it all. And, you know, in basketball, usually it's region 2 and 3. If you can win one of those and survive and come out, then you got a chance to win the whole thing. And so it was really fun to get to be a part of that.
I even remember like the amount of tension that was over like the Tenaha tournament when y'all had the teams, because who you would always play who in the finals.
Koontz was the
Yeah.
one down there that you'd run into a lot. You know, in 2013, White Oak, Tatum, and Koontz were 1, 2, and 3 in the state pretty much the whole year. And then us and Tatum were in the same district, and whoever got second in our district was going to play most likely Koontz in the second round. And so, I mean, to get through that ringer, and I feel like, no offense to anybody, to Brock, Idalou, or any of those, but in 2013, we had to beat Tatum 3 times just to get to the state tournament. And I truly feel like they were the second best team in the state that year. And so that just, if getting through the region was something, I'm sure Scott feels that way in football as well. If you can get through the region, then you got a shot after that.
So both of you were also assistants in East Texas before you took over as head coaches. Coach Surratt, I told you I touch on the time period in the book of when you were under Coach Norton at Texas High, the run y'all had, how influential that was, your relationship with Ryan, and then going over and taking Carthage. And Coach Boyett, I saw the post you recently made about Coach Griffin being inducted into the THSCA Hall of Honor. If you wouldn't mind, like, I guess in the lens of when you were a young assistant coach in the area, who were some of the torchbearers, if you will, of the region that you just kind of idolized?
Well, first of all, I owe everything to Barry when you're talking about that. I mean, we'd sit around and he wanted to talk about protection all the time, and I wanted to talk about passing the ball. I could care less about what they did up front, that kind of deal. But now protection is my favorite. But, he's one, and then you got to go back to the same guys. I mean, in my, East Texas, Jeff Traylor. I mean, those guys, they're the guys that Jeff been doing it a long time. He and I are the same age, and I want to tell a funny story before we get done with that. But Coach Russell, Rodney Russell, and John David Russell's guys that I coached under and were just great coaches. And but there's just so many great coaches. I don't want to mention too many other than the ones that kind of coached me, and I had the blessing to coach with. But again, Mike Wood, I mean, this region is loaded with great coaches, but it's the best region in the state, no doubt, in 4A for football. And so I'm just blessed to get to coach in it.
Well, when I was hired at White Oak in the fall of '88, Coach Griffin, that Hunter mentioned, was the head coach here. And of course, he's an icon here, and then, just got elected to the Hall of Honor, THSCA. And I can't tell you how much I learned from him. I do very little football when I first started. I always liked the game, but, didn't know a lot about it. He took me under his wing, and, just the way he did coaches meetings and things where every position coach got up there every year, told exactly what they were going to do, the drills. I learned so much football, but also just the way to be a head coach, the way to coach your coaches. And, so much that I learned from him is just, I could go on for days about that. But I was also so fortunate that while the time he was here then, you also had Jack Murphy at Gladewater. And I mean, 29 years, I think, at Gladewater. You had Coach Alexander finishing up at Dangerfield and coaching at Troop and Arlington. Those 3 guys were pretty good friends too. They were a lot different in so many ways, but just seeing the respect that they had for each other and the way they competed against each other, you just learn so much from hanging around guys that have been through it. And, probably one of the greatest compliments I ever got was from Coach Murphy. And actually, Pete Carr at Tatum, who I was talking about earlier, he had been for an interview over at Gladewater. Their basketball job was open. And Pete told me later, because we were friends, and he said, when I was talking to Coach Murphy, somehow the topic came up, well, what kind of coach are you looking for? And Coach Murphy said, I want somebody that gets out of them what that guy at White Oak gets out of them. I don't think he even knew my name, but he at least, that threw a compliment at me from him. And I still remember that, obviously, and just one of the proudest things I think I ever had said, just because I had so much respect for him. But when I was coming up, those were just 3 icons in East Texas coaching and football particularly.
Gabe, when you started,
I agree with Dennis Alexander. I should have named that one. I got my butt kicked in high school by Coach Alexander when he was in Dangerfield. I was through the 80s when they were 83, 84, 85. That was
a bad time to play Dangerfield.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's any doubt in the job that I have right now, which is nothing but evaluating and scouting and, the media side of that. There is no doubt in my mind that having almost a decade of covering all sports helps in that, especially because the guys that you see getting drafted in the NFL now the vast majority are multi-sport guys. And from an evaluation standpoint, I can relate to athleticism that transcends sport, whether it's track and field or basketball or something else. And having the opportunity to cover all that back then really has helped set that foundation for me. And I say all that as to point out that whether it's Scott Surratt or Ron Boyett or John King or Jeff Traylor or, the late great Rick Dowdle or the late great Dickie Meeks or, all these other guys, Jerry Stanford, whether at White Oak or at Flower Mound Marcus or at Texas High, all these coaches and the access that I was granted, to see these guys up close, see Kendall Thompson up close, to see, I'm trying to think of, Longview's had a Traven Howard. Traven Howard's a guy that, he had one offer from UTSA until 2 weeks before signing day. He goes to TCU. He's the program leader in tackles and just won a Super Bowl with the Rams. Patrick Mahomes, Coach Cook at White House, being able to have that foundation from a point of reference and a perspective is something that has served me well. And it's because of the access granted by all those guys. And, Mahomes is one that I now can kind of, taunt colleagues with I was around when Mahomes, I remember back when Patrick Mahomes was a safety, sophomore playing safety, or putting up a triple double in basketball, or going up against Michael Kopech from Mount Pleasant, who is now a starter for the White Sox. I remember going to a baseball game where they started against each other, and Mahomes is throwing about 93 and Kopech's throwing 98. And there's about 50 scouts there. So it's, that time back then, I've really cherished it because not only is it my home region, but it really served me well. Just the access and how generous the vast majority of the coaches and players were back then really helped me out in the long run.
Awesome. So a similar question for both of you. When you had it rolling, kind of in that 08 to 13 region type deal, who are one or two coaches you loved just scheming against, that you loved, you had such great respect for them, and you knew it was going to be hard, but there was you loved going against them too?
That's an easy one. If we're going on to pick one, that's Jeff Traylor. That's the time that we met a few times, and he got me once, twice, and I got him more than that. But no, anyway, he kind of gets you crawl going, as they say, but hey, it was mutual respect. We love each other. We were great friends, and we knew what kind of schemes they had, what kind of coaches, what kind of players. So they always got our best, and hopefully they got our best. And but it was fun before the pregame. That may be more fun than coaching when you actually get there and talking to Jeff Traylor in pregame. He and I just he's the same age as I am. We went into the East Texas Hall of Honor a few years back, and it was John King, Jeff Traylor, and me. And this is a funny story we'll get to about Traylor. I'm going to get on top of here, but his son was there, and he thought they were doing it by decades. I'm older than Traylor, and Traylor's older than John King. So they thought I was in the recent decade, and then he knew how his dad was, and then he thought King was like in the 60s. It was a funny deal, but King won't like me saying that. But it's Jeff. There's no doubt about it, because we're at the same level, and he brought out our best.
Well, for me, that's about the time we dropped in classifications, because so obviously that helps quite a bit. We went from, a small fish in a big pond to a big fish in a small pond. And district-wise, Curtis Lewis at Dangerfield was always one. They were always athletic, talented. He did such a good job with them. Ron Hanks at Mount Pleasant Chapel Hill, we'd always run into them at the playoffs, but probably the two for sure. Obviously, our rivalry with Tatum and Coach Carr, our friendship and just the closeness there was always an intriguing battle. He always does such a good job there. And I mean, they play so hard. I remember one of the hardest things, I'd hate it when the ball would go out of bounds, because just trying to get the ball in bounds against them was so hard. And then, though we didn't play but twice, Jeff Bell at Brock, that guy's, he's fixing to win his 1,000th game here before long. And he's just a legend in Texas high school basketball. And so that was always a challenge to prepare for them. So off the top of my head, that's probably four that I would mention.
That's good. All right. So I was always curious about this. Coach Surratt, I know you coached at your hometown, Lennon Kildare, as an assistant. And obviously, Coach Boyett, you still coach at White Oak. So the protagonist in the book is Jeff and his time at Gilmer. What do people not really understand about the challenges and the benefits about coaching in your hometown?
The challenges of everybody expects more of you, I believe, because everybody knows you, and then they think they can talk to you more. And I'm not that guy. So I don't have any bad experiences going back to my hometown. I loved every minute of it, because I didn't go to the local feed store and talk and do that stuff. And I got great friends, but they knew where the line was. They're not football coaches, but I mean, I loved it. And, obviously Jeff is his hometown. I mean, he made Gilmer.
Well, I know for me, kind of like Scott was saying, the benefits far outweighed the challenges. I was only 25 when I was the head coach here. And when I was hired here, I was 22. And I mean, there's a lot of kids in the school that knew me more as Ron than they did Coach Boyett. And everybody on the staff had taught me. And, so that stuff's a little awkward at times. But again, it's far more benefit than challenges. Now, what some people don't know is when I first became the head coach, the assistant principal, the high school principal, and the superintendent had all been basketball coaches at White Oak. And so that was a benefit in a lot of ways, but there's also a lot of free advice going around in the hallways a lot of times too. So it had its challenges. And also, like Scott was saying, I had to kind of keep my distance from people, because a lot of them knew my family, knew me. I can remember my first basketball camp, everybody's coming to sign up. And I'm getting this look from everybody like, do I have to pay? I've known you since you were about 5, or I know your dad and your mom. And I'm looking at them like, I can't let everybody in free because you know me. I know everybody here. And so that was kind of, some things you got to work through. But no doubt the benefits far outweigh any kind of challenges.
Wouldn't trade it.
Yeah.
So
one thing I was going to say about Jeff, some probably know this, but when he got hired at Gilmer, they only gave him a 1-year contract his first year. And I think the board vote was like 4-3. And, that didn't scare Jeff. He knew if he could just get his foot in the door, he was confident to know what he could do. But he definitely had some challenges to start off with. And, you start off like that and then you leave and they name the stadium after you, I think that says something about you for sure.
You mentioned earlier that Coach Traylor was the same guy back in college that he was later on. And like that, seeing him go from the high school game to the college game, y'all know it as well as anybody. So much of your job is recruiting. Like when you once you're in that college level, I mean, it's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And I knew that, I was confident that he would be good going up to that level because like you said, like he's as real as it gets. he can read a room within 30 seconds of being in a room. He has read everybody in there. He's not going to be fake. He knows how to talk to all kinds of different people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and they all respect him. And it's a major reason he is the head coach at at an FBS school and just won, 12 games. It's the same reason somebody like Joey McGuire has a really good shot at being good at Texas Tech, being good there, because he's a high school coach, and those guys they're players first oriented. They're player oriented. They're people oriented. They're community culture oriented, and recruiting and relating to players and all that, just it comes completely naturally to them.
All right, last question. This is for all of you. So like when you look at the trajectory, this is a big part, I guess, of what I wanted to try and get across in this, of like from 2010 up until now, where you see like this climax of all of these different players that are getting notoriety, major colleges, and they're excelling in the NFL. And then you also look at what Jeff's done. And Coach Surratt, you mentioned this early on, he was the first one that broke through, if you will. And not only has he broke through, he's won. Like it's, there's success with it too. You're seeing players succeed. There's more attention. What do you think, by all these examples that exist now, what do you think that ultimately shows to the rest of the state and the rest of the country about how unique and special the East Texas region is?
Well, the East Texas region in football, there's no doubt it's the best. And, talking about Jeff started it really, and, how he did it was how hard his team played. He won every drill. If he didn't win the drill, if he didn't win the one-on-one, I mean, he's a perfectionist in everything. And that's what I see about coaches in East Texas in this region is it may not be the highest paid region in the state, but there's no doubt it's the best coaching in the state. And that keeps the edge on us guys to keep getting better and to keep visiting guys and going to clinics and, keep the knife sharp. If you don't, you get stabbed with their sharp knife. And there's no question it's the best region. And I'm so fired up and excited to be the head coach at Carthage in this region, because I know how tough it's going to be and how challenging it's going to be. And hopefully the next 4 years is the best we have in Carthage since I got my son coming up.
Well, it was so fun for me to watch Jeff do that, just because I admired him so much. And, I would, during football season, they always practiced in the evening. I guess, I don't know if they still do that or not during 2 days. They would do it in the evening some. So I'd get done with our practices, and at least once a year I'd go watch them and just see how he did things, how their staff did things. Like Gabe was saying, he's the full package. I mean, he's got the X's and O's, the motivation, coaches, the whole deal. And, when he started moving up through the ranks and going into college, I remember when SMU came open and there was a little push to get him the job there. I mean, whoever's willing to take that opportunity to give it to him, you just know, those of us here that know him, he's going to do it. I mean, I've just never seen him not take a challenge like that and succeed at it. And that kind of set the groundwork for East Texas football, I think, because it's such a high level of coaching, like Scott was talking about earlier. The athletes are here. There's the communities that support it. A lot of great facilities in these places. So, it's there to be successful. But to see a local guy do it, and, Jeff, you text him now, he's going to text you back. It may be 3 days later because he's busy, but he's going to get back in touch with you. He's a Texas high school football coach and will always will be. And, it's just fun to see him get to do the things that he's done. I remember after he got, what was it, a $10 million contract or whatever it is, something millions or whatever.
29.
Was that what it was? I texted him right after that came out, and I said, all right, you're officially kicked out of the nickel dime quarter poker game for college. You're out now. So, and sure enough, he texts me back, LOL, I needed that, so man, it's just fun to see what he's done. And I love that they're on TV so much that you can watch them because it's just fun.
Yeah, something that really stood out to me watching the NFL playoffs was you see San Francisco, and on offense, they have Longview at left tackle, Trent Williams. They've got a Longview running back, Jermichael Hasty, and they have an Elkhart running back, Jeff Wilson. I mean, that's just, all from that 2004-5 to 2014-ish, 2015-ish era, all right there represented on one side of the ball for one NFL team. And along those same lines, what y'all are talking about with Coach Traylor was, his ability to motivate. Gilmer always has talent. Like Gilmer's always, they may not always be the most talented, but they're among the most talented in their classification. And Jeff Traylor could get Chris Boyd and Blake Lynch, who are both in the NFL now, thinking that nobody thought they were any good. That everyone thought that they were overrated and not very good. He had a real way of kind of an us against the world mentality that was really maybe it falls under the category of the rah-rah, fiery kind of motivational manner, but it worked. It always worked. I mean, you saw it. He would come out onto the field with his team. And the players, just like with y'all or with John King or something, like these players will do anything for these coaches. And, Chris Boyd and Blake Lynch and all those guys, GJ Kinney and Stump Godfrey and, David Snow, just go down the long list of guys. They were really good, but, to get guys who know they're good, to get them to think that everybody is doubting them, when in reality, there's really not many people doubting them, really speaks to his ability to pull out the best out of those guys.
No doubt. Well, Coach Boyett, Coach Surratt, Gabe, thank y'all so much for doing this with me. Y'all are the best of the best at what you do. So I was just fired up that we could get this group together. So I really appreciate this. And so.
Enjoyed it, man. Appreciate you having me.
Go
Absolutely.
Dogs.
That's right. Go Dogs, Gabe. Let's go get them both.
All right, guys.
All right. We'll see you later. See you.